Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Cheryl Selman, and welcome to the Love Code. Thank you for joining me for another one of these really inspiring and uplifting conversations. This show is all about opportunities to support you in expanding your consciousness, opening to greater healing energies, to be able to truly transform into the spiritual soul that we are. And that really was the purpose for creating the show. It's an opportunity to invite authors and spiritual masters and spiritual seekers and people who have extraordinary experiences that remind us there is so much more going on in this realm, on this planet, than we really experience often on a day-to-day basis. So we're going to expand your consciousness and uplift you, and that's what it's all about. So I have a few announcements before we get going. For those who are listening for the first time, welcome. Please go to my Facebook page, which happens to be What Women Must Know, which is the name of my other podcast on Progressive Radio Network. And you're also welcome to go to my website, which is Dr. Cheryl Selman, because on both those platforms I share the archives of these shows, and I put all sorts of inspiring and uplifting information, research, articles that I come across that I believe will help you start your day in just the right way. So there you go. And one thing, just really quickly, I want to say I have two very special programs coming up in 2020. It's the first time I've really announced it. So first of all, I will be returning to Costa Rica to spend a week at Rhythmia Life Advancement Center. This is the fourth group that I will be taking. Rhythmia is the only medically licensed plant medicine center in the world. It's a truly profound experience. We are going to be working with the traditional plant medicine of the Amazon indigenous people who've been using this plant medicine for 4,000 years for spiritual awakening and healing, and it's called ayahuasca. So if you'd like to know more, please stay tuned, because I'll be sharing more of this information on my website and also on my Facebook page, or you can contact me directly. And the other announcement is so that's February 9th, 2020, and in October 19th, 2020, so this is all happening next year, I will be taking a small group of people to the magical kingdom of Bhutan. So if Bhutan is on your bucket list, or if you didn't even know where Bhutan was, but when you check it out, you may discover it is on your bucket list, let me know, because that's going to be a truly transformational program. You know, in Bhutan, which is the purest Buddhist country in the world and one of the most beautiful, it has a Ministry of Happiness, and they did a survey in Bhutan, and 97% of all the citizens of Bhutan say they're happy, which says something special about this country. So, so if you are called to any of these experiences, please get in touch with me. You can message me on my Facebook, What Women Must Know, or you can send an email to DRS for Dr. S at Dr. Cheryl Selman. I'll be happy to send more information to you. Okay, so that's it for all those announcements, and now I'm really excited to bring my guest on to the show with you. We're going to be walking with angels during this conversation, and my guest is Keith Leon S., who wrote the book Walking with Angels, A True Story, and we're going to be exploring the realm of angels, whether you believe in angels, whether you have had your own personal experience with angels, whether you are open to all possibilities. I think everyone will be really inspired by this conversation. So just let me share a little bit about my guest. A multiple best-selling author, well-known speaker, and talented musician, Keith Leon S., has spoken at events that included Jack Canfield, Neale Donald Walsh, Barbara DeAngelis, John Gray, Michael Beckwith, and Marianne Williamson. He made music with Stevie Wonder, Ben Vereen, Nancy Wilson, Keb Mo, and Carl Anderson. And Keith has been led by angels since his early childhood. So, again, he is the author of Walking with My Angels. And I'm just very thrilled to be able to welcome Keith to the show today. So, hello, Keith.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I love when you said like the mission of your show, like why you do it. I just love the words that you put on that, and I think that's so beautiful to purposely bring people together for the sake of inspiration and transformation. It's beautiful.
Well, thank you. You know, if anyone dares listen to the news these days, and I actually make a point of avoiding the news intentionally.
Me too.
But for those who may still be drawn to the news, God, it's so stressful. You know, we need something to counteract the frequency and energy that we get. And what happens in our bodies, right, when we listen to the news, because news is all about negativity and drama and trauma and fear. So we don't really thrive with that energy going on within us. And so this is a way to help people, you know, have an antidote to it.
Yeah, it's a breath of fresh air. Yes.
Thank you so much. So your book is so interesting. I've read a little bit about your book. I've, you know, looked at some of the YouTubes. You've had quite an amazing journey, Keith. So I'm just going to invite you to share a bit about that journey, and let's talk about your experience with angels, and we'll dive in from there.
Okay. Well, we can go way back to childhood if we want to talk about angels. I was able to hear my guardian angel's voice since I was a child, and I had a mother who was manic depressive, and I would say mostly depressive. Manic was only once in a while, and that was a lot of fun. That was the fun part. But this depressive part was the part that had it so that my mother really wasn't available to me much, and I didn't have a father. So this angel voice, I always knew where my angel was because I could literally hear the voice. So if the angel was up in the ceiling in the corner, that's where the voice would come from. If the angel was standing right behind me, that's where the voice would come from. So for me, there was evidence that it was real pretty early on. And this guardian angel kept me out of harm's way so many times in my life. I should have died 8 times already. And some of the ways that he kept me out of harm happened when I was a child. So there's a part I talk about in the book where I could have been molested by this man behind a church, but my angel told me exactly what to say and do to get out of that situation. And by myself, I would have been in trouble. But with the angel's voice, I got out of that. And then I had a few like very near-death experiences as a child, and angels showed up to save me. One being at camp with other teenagers, and I talked them into letting me go out on this cliff with them, even though they didn't want to let me because I was younger. And I ended up slipping and falling off the cliff, and they just grabbed my hand in the last second as I was already over the cliff, grabbed my hand, and they formed it like a human chain. And as they lifted me, I became light as a feather because I felt underneath me like angels lifting me up. And so they were able to pull me up because I was pretty much weightless at that point. And they were like, woohoo, celebrating that they were heroes, and I just kept my mouth shut because I didn't want to tell them we had otherworldly help with that. And so for me, it's just from childhood was my friend, was the father I didn't have, was my advisor telling me when not to go up the alley, what not to do, what to do, and all of those things. And so I call him a heavenly helper that I've had since childhood. And it's truly a blessing in my life. So that's childhood. Where do you want to go from there?
Well, so was there, well, I guess I wonder, do we all have guardian angels in childhood, or do we all have our guardian angels all the time? What is a guardian angel? What is an angel? I mean, these are questions that I ponder all the time.
Well, guardian angel is an etheric being that has been assigned to you. So we all have at least one guardian angel, and they have two jobs. One job, love us unconditionally. Yay! So this angel is like our mom. There's nothing we could ever do that would make them not love us. They're just going to be the one that loves us unconditionally. And the second thing they're to do is to get us to our predetermined expiration date. You know, we have a contract of how long we're going to be here, and they need to get us to that date. And so that's their job, and I put that in quotes, right? That's what they are to do. But because we have free will, they're also not to do anything else unless we ask. And so if we want support and help from our guardian angels, then we need to ask for it. But once we do that, then they can show us evidence all the time of how they are there for us and have been there for us all of our lives. Because of the purpose of why I'm here on Earth, I have actually more than one. And I remember it was in my early 40s, I was at an event, and there was a really well-known angel person that you would know, and she looked over at me and she was just like, stay there, like that. And so I just kind of stayed put, and she said, you know, like connected with all the people who were asking their questions, and then eventually she said, I need to excuse myself. And she came over and she leaned in and said, do you by any chance believe in angels? And I go, oh, do you mean them, my posse? And she laughed so hard. She said, oh, thank God, because I've never seen so many assigned to one person in my life. Like, what are you up to? What are you doing? I need to know what you'd be up to that you would have so many with you and supporting you.
Well, okay, so we all have guardian angels, and guardian angels, can you just define a bit more who these etheric beings are? Is there a way to talk about who they are, where they come from? Why do we have the ones we have? I've never asked these questions to anyone who might be able to answer them, so I'm taking advantage of this opportunity, Keith.
Yeah. Well, they come from this. There's many words like the spirit world, the etheric realm, from heaven, however you like to say it, that makes you feel the most comfortable. And they just are assigned to us to help us keep our kind of contract that we agreed to before we came here, like what we'd be up to, how long we would be here, and some of the experiences we would go through. And they're kind of just helping as much as they can to help us, guide us through that. And then again, if we ask them for support, then they're able to show up for us. And so some people, once they ask, will literally hear a voice like I did. Some people will see their angels, and I've seen that as well. Some people will have their guardians show up in other ways, like through other people or in the words of a song. There's so many ways that they can show their evidence to us. And the cool thing is when you do ask for evidence, when you do get curious and want to know, like what you're asking right now, and you ask them, it's kind of like, and I'm dating myself now, in the past when I grew up and we turned on the radio, we actually had to take this dial and turn it left and right and try to get the station to tune in. And sometimes you had to go left, you had to go right, you had to go, and there was like all the static, and you'd go left and right and back and forth, and then eventually it would just pop into the perfect place. And once it was in that place, it was crystal clear, and it sounded beautiful, and it was just so clear, and you just, after that, you're like, don't touch that station, don't touch the dial, right? And this is what it's like with our angels. Once you ask and you're looking now for evidence of how your angels are there for you, it's like you've tuned in that dial. And now that you've put the focus on seeing the evidence and you go about your daily life, you will start to see all the ways that they show up, have been showing up for you all along, and you may have missed it because you just didn't have that focus, weren't looking for them.
So how would you ask for your angels to make their presence known? What specifically would you say? How would people invoke that experience?
Yeah. Well, let's see. I'll just flip open to my book here. At the very end of my book, I did an angel evocation, and I'll just read that one.
Okay.
You could just say, "Dear angels, I am open to your guidance and your wisdom. I'm grateful for all you've done, and I want you to know that I'm now listening. I am looking for you. I am listening for you. Guide me, instruct me, show me all the ways that I can be and do and have all that I am to be, do, or have in this life. And how may I be of service? How may I live into my purpose? Show me the way. And I am grateful for your support." I always like to tell them I'm grateful. "And so it is. Thank you, thank you, thank you." So that was just the one that came to me right when I kind of finished the book, and I was like, oh, now what do I want to give them as evocation? So I would say it probably differently every time. It would be whatever my heart desires in that moment, and I would word it a little bit differently, but it would always kind of be like that. I would just say, here's what I'm looking for, the type of support. I would love that, and thank you in advance for your support. And then I always like to say, "And so it is," because it's like a declaration to the universe that this is now happening, and I am tuned in, and so I will see this when it happens. It's so yeah, it can be as simple as that. Whatever comes to you to say will be perfect, because they're just right there with you and waiting for you to ask however you'd like to.
So, it's really asking from your heart, right? The words are not as important as the feeling that you're desiring, you're yearning for, is to have that connection from your heart, right? And that's probably what those beings relate to more than a word.
Right, and they've been with you since the beginning, so they know your heart. They know it quite well.
Yeah.
And they've just been waiting for you to ask. They're like, yay! You can hear them go, yes! Once you finally ask, they're like, all right, here we go. Now I get to really have some fun instead of just shadowing you, trying to keep you from danger, right?
Well, that's such a wonderful challenge that I'm going to put out to my audience. So my challenge to my audience, to everyone listening, is do whatever you feel called to do from your heart to open that channel, that communication with your guardian angel, and then let me know what the experience is, and we can have people share. We'll get back in touch with people and talk about these stories on air one of these times. I would love to see if people are willing to take up that challenge and just ask. It's, take 3 minutes, 2 minutes, and just ask. Let's see what happens. So you must need a posse, because if you almost died 8 times, Keith, you must be kind of a reckless person. I don't know. It's like they need to keep you on track. What happened? What? I mean, not too many people can say they've almost died 8 times. I don't think I've ever had a close call with death that I was aware of. What's up with you, Keith?
That is a great question, and one that I wondered myself for so many years, because my question more was like, why did they save me so many times? Like, what on earth am I up to or here to do that I would be spared when so many people aren't? And I saw people be in the same predicaments that I was in and not make it through. But just to jump back really quick, I want to be clear that, I call them angels because I've had direct evidence of angels. But I want to be clear that everybody calls it something different. Right? Some people call it intuition. Some people call it inner knowing or divine guidance, spirit, God, universe. Energy. I've heard it called so many different things, and I like to say that it doesn't matter, or it doesn't care what you call it, as long as you call it, right? And that's the evocation, and that's the invitation that we just talked about. So I don't feel like was reckless. Just so many things it wasn't even in my hands. It was just like I was in a car with the family, and then we were in an accident, and it could have been so much worse than it was, and I was fine. There were
what happened in that circumstance?
Well, the one that I wanted to share with you is when I was a teenager. I was driving with my friend. That was a reckless one. But just to share the experience with you, he just got a '69 Mustang for his birthday, my friend, and we were like 17 years old, and we went out, and he was like showing me how fast it would go, and we were speeding down this road. I looked over, and we were doing 90 miles an hour on the street, and as we were approaching and seeing that the red light that was ahead of us, he started pumping the brakes, and nothing was happening. And he was like, "Dude, no brakes!" And I'm like, "Oh no!" And he keeps pumping them, and eventually they locked up, and we skidded toward the cars that are all in the intersection. And then he kind of threw the car sideways. We slid to the left, to our left, and then there was this little island that held the power box for the lights that were at that corner. And we both, in the car, just slammed into that island and hit that box. And we both heard glass break and metal ripple, and the sound of nasty crash. And as soon as we heard that sound, then I went into what's called a life review. So instantly I saw myself as being born. And then I saw in a flash all of the things that had happened to me that were kind of like the key moments of my life, first birthday party and mom holding me in her arms, and all these pictures came in a flash, and they came in order of like the story of my life, right? Like a quick clip of my life. And so it went from birth all the way up to dude, no brakes, the slamming of the hitting the box, and then it just stopped, like slowed down and stopped, and then it went in reverse. It started going in reverse, and it went all the way through what had just happened in reverse, all the way back to childbirth. And then when I came to, I'd like to say, I opened my eyes. My friend and I were sitting in the car, and we're out of the intersection over on the side of one of the streets, and the car is purring. And he's like, "Oh, my God, did you just see your life flash before your eyes?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Oh, my dad's going to kill me," because we both know that the car is totaled. And so we both jump out of the car, and it took me a second to get around the car, and he just said, "Holy crap." And I come around, and the car is perfect. Nothing wrong with the car, but the back rear hubcap is missing. So we both turn and we look into the middle of the intersection, which now, for some reason, there are no cars anywhere to be seen or found. It's just us, and the hubcap is in the middle of the intersection. So we go pick it up, and we're standing there going, "What happened to all the people? What happened? How's the car not totaled? What's going on?" And we both looked at that little island that had the power box, and the curb on the island was made of that old chunky asphalt that they used to have. It wasn't the clean kind of gray kind. It was that chunky asphalt that could be scraped. If you scraped it, it would have an indentation. And sure enough, there was a giant scrape in the curb going right to the power box that where the hubcap carved in, and just proved to us that we had indeed hit that power box. And so we're trying to process it, kind of in shock, right? And he puts the hubcap on, and we get back in the car, and he goes, "Yeah, all that God stuff you're always talking about?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "All this time I thought you were full of crap." He said, "But I believe now." He was like, "No way." And we kind of compared what we had seen, and it was really the same thing that I now know as life review. And so that was one of the times when I literally saw my whole life flash before my eyes, and I literally saw what happened just disappear. It all of a sudden didn't happen. And all the cars that were there, to us, we think they would have, I don't know, pulled over to see if we were okay. Like, where did the people go? So the whole thing was a mystery and something that we really had to go to prayer with. We really had to think about what could have that been about, just to be able to even process what had happened. And of course, I knew that I had been helped once again, because it had happened many times before that. But I wasn't, getting my friend on board with that. I was just happy that he thought there was something that had helped us, because he didn't believe in anything until that moment.
Wow, that's such an extraordinary story. It's almost like you traveled on a different timeline or something, all of a sudden you were somewhere else, and it's a whole other different event occurred. I don't even know how you ever explain that, or if even words to talk about what you experienced in that moment, because it defies logic, right?
Yes. And and I've had so many moments of defies logic in my life that it's like there's no way I can deny that there are angels, that there's more than we can see with our eyes. Right? And then I've been guided to do so many things that have completely changed my life, that I know that we have access to everything, right? We have every question that we could even think of. We already have the answer to that question within us. And because we're connected to the source that is everything, that created us, that has the answers to all the questions. So we decided to kind of form our energy, because we're made up of pure energy, and we decided to form our energy into this body so that we could experience what it's like to love and be loved, and to experience all the myriad of emotions and things that we experience. We just wanted to experience that in a body, and that's why we came here. But because we're made up of that pure energy, that God stuff, whatever you like to call it, right? That has no beginning, no end, and has the answers to every question. We're made up of that, which means we also have direct access to it. And so what I love to teach people is, when we want to get answers to our questions, so whether we call it guardian angel or access to it, right? What I'm talking about, if we will sit, ask, and listen, is what has worked for me to get those answers. So there's a lot of people sitting, right, meditating, and there's a lot of people asking, a lot of questions happening. But how many times do we really, once we've asked a question, sit in the silence long enough to get the answer? There have been questions that were so important to me that I would not be moved until I got the answer. So one time during a book project that I did, I asked a question, what is my next step for this book project? And I waited 2 days for that answer, and the only time I got up was to go to the restroom or to eat. And other than that, I was sitting in the question, what is my next step? And thank goodness I did that, because when I finally got the answer, I downloaded a process of how to ask really well-known people to be in my book. And it wasn't something I knew how to do. I never had been able to access that in my mind by myself, with my Keith, my ego, right? I could never get to that. And in waiting, when it came to me in a whole process. Like, first you do this, then you do that, and you'll say this, and you'll do that. And I just wrote it down and did it. And ultimately, for that book, I ended up interviewing 68 of the greatest minds in the world that I could even think of to interview. And I only asked 80 people to be in the book. I got 68 yeses. Of the 12 no answers, 10 was the publicist, so not actually the person they wanted to be in it. So I got 78 yeses, essentially. And then the 2 no's that I got using that process were people that just didn't want to be as vulnerable as I was asking them to be, right? They didn't want people to know their private stuff. And so it's 80 out of 80, right? I mean, like, that's amazing for anything. But and I could never have accessed that process by myself, because I was willing to sit, ask, and more importantly, listen until I got the answer. Once I started doing that, it changed everything in my life.
Wow. So this is really great wisdom and advice. So I'm sure people listening have, all sorts of questions about this piece that you've just talked about. So when you say having time to listen, what could that look like for people, Keith? If people want to open to receive guidance to address either some challenge in their life or a purpose that they're looking for, what would it look like to ask and then to sit or be receptive enough, long enough to get an answer? What would be some of the ways that could be?
Well, if we're blessed enough to be able to carve out that kind of time, then that would be sit in the silence. We don't all have that luxury. So if you have to go to work or you have to get up and you do have to go somewhere, it would just be remaining in the question. And so questions that we ask, this is really important as well. I hear a lot of people will say, why? Like, why did this happen to me? And the way the universe works is if we say, why did that happen, then the universe will keep giving us reasons to ask why. So we have to be really careful what we ask. So I love to ask how questions and what questions. So what is my next step? What should I do next? Or how can I be more loving? How can I be there for people in a way that will support them, right? So those questions. And then I just ask the question. And then if I have to get up and go somewhere that just doesn't seem like I have the luxury to sit around for 2 days, then I'll remain in that question and just keep asking the question even as you're driving on the freeway, right, or the highway going somewhere, or you are at work and you just keep spinning the question. And over and over and over again, just keep asking and stick with that one question until you get the answer. And there's something about that being willing to stay in the one question will not only show yourself, but the universe that you really do want that answer, and your angels. And so what will happen is sometimes when we remain in the question, then we're trying to kind of do something, and sometimes we're working too hard at it. But what will happen is eventually the question will become like a mantra to you. And you'll be spinning the question, but you won't be working so hard to get the answer, if that makes sense.
Right.
You'll just be asking the question. And then at one point, in the space in between two breaths, whether you just exhaled and you're ready for your inhale or the other way around, in the space between two breaths, you'll go, and that's when you make that sound, that's when you got the answer to that question. And it usually comes quickly. It comes in a wave. It comes in a picture. It comes in a song. I mean, it could even be in the lyrics of a song, right? You ask the question, you got nothing while you're sitting there, then you get in the car and you turn the radio on, and the very first song, the lyrics of the song give you your answer. So there's so many ways that we can get our answers, and it's remaining in the question and even having fun with it that we'll be able to tune into the divine guidance to get the answer.
I think that's really such great advice. It's like if you ask that question and then you're, every 5 seconds looking for an answer, it's like you're efforting and making it happen and trying, and it actually doesn't work that way, does it? It's like asking the question and then creating a receptive space that's not one of efforting, right? It's just being open, take a breath. You don't know how it's going to show up. You don't want to be looking for it under every rock tree. It's like you have to. Yeah. I would imagine you just have to set an intention, ask the question, and then hold that intention, and be open. And you never know. Some of my most creative ideas or answers come when I'm just out on a walk, in the park. In fact, that to me is where I get my best creative solutions to things, is when I'm out, because when I'm out walking, all of a sudden I become mindless, and just in the experience, right? The birds, the trees, all of a sudden I'm just my mind slows down, and I'm more receptive, and then different thoughts just come in that gives me this inspiration.
Yeah, you're in the law of allowing. There's so many spiritual laws that are just as real as the law of gravity, right? And that's the law of attraction, law of allowing, the law of creation. Those are the three that you're sitting in with what you were talking about. So it's like, the law of attraction, bring to me the answer, right? I'm now attracting the answer to me. And then the law of creation, okay, now we're creating the answer. And then the law of allowing is what you're talking about. Okay, so I fully believe now that I am going to receive the answer. So now I can just keep asking the question, knowing that I'm going to receive the answer, just kind of breathing into that. Now I'm going about my business, doing what I'm doing. Oh, I know I'm going to receive the answer, and that being willing to allow it to come in instead of efforting so hard is what creates the answer. So I love that.
So do you think that part of the ability to operate in this world but not of this world requires us to have some quiet, reflective time on a regular basis? We live really busy lives, but is that enough to really fulfill all the possibilities that we have available to us?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd be able to get through without some spiritual practice, and the awareness that I received from one of my mentors years ago was, he said, you are the 5 people that you hang out with the most. And that was so huge to me, because at the time I looked at the 5 people that I was hanging out with the most, and they were negative, and they didn't really believe the same things that I believed. And so I was constantly hearing their feedback and their belief system coming at me. And it's like it was almost overriding what I know to be the truth. So for me, I surround myself with positive music. I actually write positive music and record CDs, and the CDs and the music that I write are the things that I need to hear, right? Are my truth with a capital T, what I need to hear to keep me on course. And I write those and record them, and then other people hear them and they go, oh my God, I love that song. Here's how it helped me, and they get benefit too. But I can say it was kind of for me, right, that I wrote those. And I do meditate and pray, and I do listen to Reverend Michael Beckwith. Agape is my spiritual center. I love him because it isn't a religious dogma that was telling me that I was bad and could never ever be good enough. It was finally somebody said what I believed since childhood, right? And that is that I am enough, and that I am in co-creation with the source that created everything. And I started actually hearing what I had already believed, just hadn't heard very many people say other than me, right, since I was a child. So, and then I love what you said about the news. I like to call it the olds, because it's really, if you look at it, it's kind of the same stories over and over and over. You keep hearing the same stuff over and over again. And I was in the media. I was in TV for many, many years. And I actually had to sign non-disclosure agreements and for purely fabricated stories that I would not tell people that story was fabricated. And then many nights when I first got in the business, I would go home and watch the story on the news that we purely fabricated that day. And it wasn't long before I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't even watch this because I know what it really is. And I would say that maybe 10% of what we see on the news has any truth to it, and it's created, like you said, to sell product, to fear us into buying certain products and voting certain ways and doing certain things. There's just it's all what I call a weapon of mass distraction. It's just to distract us from knowing the truth, and that is that we are all more alike than we are different. If we are in true crisis and there are people around us, they will step up Like in real life, people you don't even know will step up and help you when you're in crisis if they're there, and they don't want us to know that. They'd rather us, be afraid to go out of the house and buy all these products and try to make ourselves look perfect and be perfect and drive the perfect car and all the things that we're fed daily, force-fed, if you will. They don't want us to know the truth, and that's that we are more alike than we are different, and we're all made and created in an image and likeness of this one source, and that love is the answer to every question that we have. They wouldn't want us to know that, right?
Mm-hmm. I love the metaphor of The Matrix, which I've watched that movie about 15 times because it's the only movie my whole life I've watched more than once, but I've actually watched it 15 times because to me it is one of the most profound messages that I have received ever in a movie. And if people listening have not watched The Matrix, I really encourage everyone to go watch it. But I always tell people watch it more than once because you probably will miss some of the more profound messages in that movie if you just get caught up in all the special effects and things. So watch The Matrix. But the message of The Matrix is that we live in a system of power and control, and the story of The Matrix is to wake up. And to me, that's really such a powerful story. It's not just a metaphor. It actually is the actions we need to be taking, because everything you were saying, that's amazing. 10% of the news is true. It's like it's all fabricated to keep us in a system that is really locking us into power and control by others. And the only way out is to reconnect to our soul, to our spiritual nature, to our angels, and you have to take some time and give yourself some space and allow yourself to ask those questions, to be connected, and then have some quiet time to hear those answers that will guide us in our life.
Yes, and we're always being guided, right? And to go to the light, right? I love that. That was like from Poltergeist. Go to the light. And I remember that affected me as in my youth, because I was like, yes, go to the light. And because the light, when you follow the light, that's where the answers are, And would you mind if I haven't got to do this in all the interviews that I've been doing. There's a story called The Cave that's in my book that's really short. Can I read that?
Oh, please do.
Okay, because this is kind of like what we were talking about, and I was like, whoa, and I flipped open, and it flipped right to the page where I wanted what I wanted to share. So
Funny about
in
that.
The book, in the book I talk about my angel, and we'll call him John, and this angel appeared to me. He was an etheric angel in the flesh who came to take me from believing in nothing to believing in everything, so that I would then be able to live into my purpose, which he would reveal to me, he told me, and then at some point he would save my life. So at this point in the book, he's kind of taking me and teaching me giving me all these teaching moments. And so it's like what you were talking about in The Matrix. So this was one of those moments for me, and so it's called The Cave. So it says, one day John and I drove out into the middle of nowhere and parked his truck and then hiked for a little while. Soon we arrived at what looked like a hole in the ground. As became my habit, I followed him. I went a few steps into the cave, and he reached into his backpack and he pulled out a flashlight. And soon there was no light at all except for the flashlight that John had in his hands. After we were in the cave for about a half an hour, John was about 100 feet in front of me, and I needed to catch up because I couldn't see much ahead. I was relying on his flashlight. Suddenly, the light went out, and I learned the meaning of not being able to see my hand in front of my face. It was pitch dark. I called out to John. There was no response. I started to feel intense anxiety and fear. I started hyperventilating. I remembered my mother and her claustrophobia, and I always thought she was exaggerating how bad she felt. Now I was experiencing it myself, and I was able to understand the panic that she went through. Where did John go? Why did the flashlight turn off, and why would he leave me? My heart raced. I was about to lose it when John's voice, when I heard John's voice say, breathe, take a breath, relax, and trust. Don't worry. He told me to sit down on the ground with my legs crossed, and he repeated that I should take a nice deep breath, relax, and trust. I did as he instructed. My heartbeat slowed, and the anxiety subsided. I focused on my breathing, and before I knew it, I was calm. When I was relaxed again, the flashlight came back on. John was standing in the exact spot where he had been when the flashlight went off. He had not moved. I could have simply walked 100 feet and I would have bumped into him. But instead, I had freaked out. He explained this was a metaphor for life. There would be many times in my life when I would become accustomed to walking in the light. Then something would happen, and the light would appear to dim or turn off. How I reacted in these situations would determine my ability to survive them. The way I reacted would also determine how much I would be able to learn from my life experiences. He told me, think of it this way. The light is always just 100 feet away. The light never leaves. It only appears to. When this happens in life, you have a choice. You can freak out, get anxious, get depressed, blame the light, point fingers, struggle, and judge. Or you can trust that the light is still there. If you can know in your heart that the light is still there, all you need to do is stay calm, navigate your way forward until you find the light. I'd like to say that after this experience, the door opened and I understood all of this. Alas, it wasn't so. To tell you the truth, when John was talking to me, I was still suffering from the effects of my panic, and I didn't quite get it. And as I had said in the past, to repeat many of, and as I said, he had to repeat many of his lessons for me before they would sink in. I said that earlier in the book. So eventually I'd come to understand the profundity of this message, but at the moment I was still mad at him.
Well, that's such a powerful story. That's a powerful story, because as you're talking about it, I'm thinking, when do we lose sight of the light? And so many times in my life, and I'm seeing this with other people that I interact with and friends and such, that there's what's often called the dark night of the soul, where suddenly everything that you believed in, or every security you had, or every healthy moment you experienced is taken away. You're dealing with an illness. You're dealing with a loss of a job, a loss of a relationship, a loss of sense of self. That to me is the same as being in that dark without the light. So it's and for me, every time I've been in that, which when you're in the dark night of the soul, it's like the incubator, right? It's like your chrysalis. You're dissolving the old sense of self, and eventually will emerge with a whole new life. But that time is so scary because you don't know what's up, what's down, how to get back to where you were, how to know where to go. And it would seem that what you're saying in that lesson is, breathe, do your practices, hold those intentions, ask for help, because eventually the new life will emerge. But in that moment, you feel totally lost. Do you have some thoughts about that, Keith?
Yeah, I like to experience what you call the dark night of the soul. I like to call that the breakdown before the breakthrough. Right? It's like when everything seems dark. And when we're at that time, that's the last time that we can really even think about this stuff. Like you and I are talking about it right now, we can clearly see, that's the breakdown before the breakthrough. But when you're in the breakdown, the last thing you're thinking is clearly enough to know what to do to get out of it. And so that's why the sit, ask, and listen. If you start to do that practice that you were just challenged to do, not but 45 minutes ago, right? Sit, ask, and listen, to evoke that presence, to kind of make that a habit or a practice. If you're already in the habit of sit, ask, and listen just to get your everyday answers, then my hope, my prayer is that when you're also in the breakdown and you're spinning out, for lack of a better word, that you'll say, well, let me just sit down for a minute and let me ask for support, and then let me listen for what the heck I should do next. You know, if sit, ask, and listen, or remember to breathe even. Just breathe right now. If I would do nothing else in this, how I'm feeling right now, let me just sit and breathe. Because when we're in that, we're even forgetting to breathe. You know, we're walking around with that tight stomach and kind of almost hyperventilating or not breathing, and even just the breath, and remembering to sit down and take a few breaths. A lot of times 3 simple inhales and exhales can bring us back to center. So it's really that.
That's great. Great advice, great wisdom to share. So before we come to the end of the show, which has gone so quickly, let's talk about your book and the website, walkingwithmyangelsbook.com, and what you're offering to people, because I know you have some special offers available.
Yeah. Well, we created this page for you to be able to not only get the book, but if you were going to get the book already, then we also wanted to give you support tools to go with the book, so that you don't just have the book, you've got a whole bunch of things that you can actually do what you read in the book. So I got a lot of the people who are well-known experts and mentors and friends of mine to kind of donate some bonuses. So if you go to the walkingwithmyangelsbook.com, if you go to that page to get the book, then you'll also get $1,620 worth of bonuses. And those are support tools that can support you in your process. And so we wanted to create that. And then if you just want to find out more about me and what I do, then you can go to beyondbeliefpublishing.com. beyondbeliefpublishing.com, and that'll have a schedule of upcoming events and just everything you'd want to know.
So I just want to say that's an amazing offer. If they go to walkingwithmyangelsbook.com and purchase the book, then they get $1,600 worth of gifts from all sorts of amazing people that are inspirational. And what a great gift you're offering people, to just support them and inspire them and uplift them for the long term, right? For the long term.
Yes.
And if you didn't even offer $1,600 worth of additional gifts, your book, Walking with My Angels, is truly inspirational and uplifting, and it's something that I would encourage everyone to pick up a copy of, to read, to reinforce the real reality that we are all living in, and know that we're always provided for and looked after and loved. Gosh, Keith, this has been a wonderful interview. For everyone who's been listening, I've had this conversation with Keith Leon S., and he's the author of Walking with My Angels. Is there one last message from your gang of angels that we can complete our conversation with on a really inspirational note?
Yes, and they gave this to me like 15 years ago, and every stage I've spoken on in my life since then, I always end with this same message, and that is that you, who are hearing my voice right now, you make a difference in this world. This world would not be the same without you, and we're making a difference every day. Like every hug, every smile, every hello that you say to someone throughout the day, you could have saved someone's life. Like if you just said hi to somebody and they felt like nobody saw them in the world and they were just about to go home and take their life because nobody saw them, and then you smiled and said hello, and they said, wow, well, that person saw me, and if they see me, maybe other people see me. Like, you could have saved someone's life with a simple hello. That's how much of a difference we're making. And those people who are around us, who we're making a difference for all the time, they already assume that you know that you're making a difference in their life, and so they forget to tell you. And so for all the people who have forgot to tell you that you make a difference, I want to tell you that for them. I want to thank you for being the gift of you. Truly, this planet would not be the same without you. You make a difference.
Wow. Beautiful message to complete a very inspirational conversation with. So thank you to you, Keith Leon S., the author of Walking with My Angels. Remember, check out walkingwithmyangelsbook.com website, because not only can you order the book, which I think is a great gift to yourself, to others, but you also get all these additional gifts for the price of a book, $1,600 worth of gifts for the price of a book. So to all of you listening, to Keith, thank you again for a wonderful conversation. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. And to all of my listeners, thank you for joining me again to have this inspirational conversation on the Love Code. And until next week, may your week be filled with love, peace, and harmony. Bye for now.